Alrighty, welcome to the Mitigation Working Group of the Maryland Commission on Climate Change. I'm Mark Stewart, Climate Change Program Manager at the Maryland Department of the Environment. Happy to be your facilitator today. We have, I think, several people standing in for some members today. We received early notification of some people standing in and serving as proxy because today is a voting meeting. So I'll just read off a few that I'm aware of. Bob Wright cannot attend today, and he designated Mike Powell as his proxy. Tyler Hoff cannot attend and designated Jamie Raley as his proxy. And Kim, I believe you need to leave around 2:25 and designated Jamie DeMarco as your proxy upon your departure. Are there any other members who are standing in for a member today?
I'm not a member, but I'm standing in for Emily Van Norden. This is Brian McGalley from Constellation.
Got it. Thanks, Brian. I also see that we're joined today by Will, is it Bolgiano, representing OPC? He was newly appointed as a member. Will, thank you very much for joining. Do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Will Bolgiano. I attended the last meeting as a proxy for Mark Shibist, who's gone on to other things. I'm relatively new at the OPC. After working about almost 9 years in private at a law firm in the energy space. I'm very excited for the work that OPC does and the work in this work group.
Awesome. Welcome aboard. And just so I have it, is there anyone else who's standing in for an MWG member today? Okay, hearing none. I will turn it to our co-chairs, Kim Coble and Mike Powell, for opening comments.
I guess just briefly, and Kim, I'll turn it over to you. We've gone through a lot this year, and we've gotten a straw poll out where we had 13 recommendations, and that, at least on the preliminary vote, was narrowed to 5. We have to come down to 4 or no more than 4. We can go less than 4, but no more than 4 recommendations to the commission. The intent of today is to come out of here at the end of the day with 4 and have those 4 be wordsmith to a point of how we want to have them presented to the commission, because the commission is ready to receive all of the recommendations from all of the work groups and come up with a final list. Kim?
Let me first apologize because I'm having connection issues, so I'll try to get that fixed. Yeah, welcome everybody. I'm glad to see the whole team here. And as Mike said, we're going to get it down to 4 recommended or 4 recommendations to send to the commission. So look forward to working with everybody on it. Thanks.
In terms of process, we had 2 presentations that could not be made for timing reasons, David Smedick and one from OPC. My understanding, Mark, is, well, I'll let you describe what we're doing with those 2.
Yeah, sure thing. So we were planning to start with some public comments because today's a voting meeting. By tradition, we open with public comments so that the members have the benefit of hearing those before heading into voting. And then the next part of the agenda would be, as Mike was indicating, an initial discussion of recommendations 12 and 13, which come from commission members David Lapp and David Smedick. And then we'll have any further discussion on any of the recommendations if the members would like, before rounding out today's meeting with identifying and finalizing your top 4 recommendations for this year. And just a note on process, the top 4 recommendations from each working group will be forwarded to the Maryland Commission on Climate Change for its consideration this fall. And then the Climate Commission will issue its final report to the governor and General Assembly by December.
And I should just real quickly add 2 points. One, because we've got a lot to do today, and we want to spend a lot of time on wordsmithing, we are asking the 2 presentations to limit it to 10 minutes if they can each, which is about what it's actually more than some of the other presentations had. And then secondly, there were some written comments submitted ahead of time that I know Jared has distributed to members of the work group. I presume those will be added to the website for anyone who wants to see them that's not on the work group following the meeting.
Yes, that's right. I was going to make a note of that, so I'll hit that now. MWG members were emailed written statements by the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, resident Jeff Silva, and several gas utility companies, including Washington Gas, Columbia Gas, and Chesapeake Utilities. So if you're a member, check your email for those written statements. We've also posted them on the MWG website. We also received written comments from Rivian, and I think that we're in the process of getting those out to members and on the website as well. So let me take the question or comment from Jennifer, and then I'm going to ask if there are any other callers today who are not MWG members and would like to provide oral comments. Then I'll turn to you next. But Jennifer, go ahead.
Apology, it was a little difficult to get the sound to work. I asked AI to look at all of the different proposals from everyone, and it rated number 9 and number 12 as doing the most to reduce greenhouse gases. I didn't hear you mention the number 9. Is that still on the list? That's the clean electricity RPS change.
I guess we should say that of the 13, the top 5 vote getters were numbers 1, 2, 8, 9, and 13. 1 and 8, 1 had 13 votes, 8 had 11 votes, 2, 9, and 13 each had 7 votes. That's out of 20 people who voted. So basically we had a 3-way tie, and those 3 that are tied didn't get majority votes, but they did get more votes than the other alternatives.
Okay, well, the ones that AI thought would do the most were 9 and 12, just FYI. Thank you.
And I will, if these numbers of recommendations that we're discussing are a mystery to anyone, I will be screen sharing as we go through this meeting so that you all have the benefit of seeing the recommendations on your screens. I see at least one person has offered to make a public comment. Scott Waitlevich, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm Scott Waitlevich with Columbia Gas of Maryland. As has been mentioned, a letter of concern was sent to the mitigation working group regarding the proposed recommendation to end all forms of accelerated cost recovery for utility gas infrastructure. So this is a complex issue. We believe, as highlighted in the details of the letter of concern, that it's inappropriate for the recommendation to move forward because there are at least 2 efforts at the Public Utility Commission right now dealing with this particular issue. In addition, the General Assembly over the last 2 years has considered this issue as well. And we believe that if the mitigation working group wanted to move forward with such a recommendation, they should hear from all interested parties on the issue in order to make an informed decision. Since that has not happened, we would respectfully request the recommendation not move forward. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Scott. Any other public comments today? Okay, well, hearing none, I think we can move into initial discussion of recommendations 12 and 13. We'll start with recommendation 12, and as we move there, I will screen share so that we all have the recommendation text in front of us. The text that I'm sharing is the same that was emailed out to MWG members and interested parties. If there are any callers today that would like to join our interested parties list, then feel free to reach out to me or to Jared Williams, and we can add you to that list. Sorry, need to scroll here. So we are going to recommendation 12, which comes from Commission Member David Lapp. And David, thank you for joining us today. We'll turn it to you to take a few minutes to walk us through your recommendation.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. And just to be clear, we are not asking this recommendation be one of the 4 MWG recommendations today, but we wanted to have the opportunity to share it with the MWG since we haven't had that opportunity. And we will present it to the full commission. So I want to start just by highlighting 4 points about the recommendation. And these are points we've been discussing for years and have spent even considerable time before the MWG in past years on these points. And our office has substantial background information on these points for anyone interested in learning more. So you can reach out to our office or visit our website. The first is that accelerated cost recovery for gas infrastructure is not necessary. It's a financial mechanism. It's not a mechanism that says how much utilities should spend or how much work they should do. The gas utilities letter that was just referenced says that STRIDE, quote, allows accelerated pipe replacement. But that's factually inaccurate. With or without STRIDE, gas utilities can replace pipes as fast as they deem necessary, and they can make other investments outside of STRIDE as fast as they deem necessary. So this recommendation is actually very modest because it would not actually require the utilities to stop any infrastructure work. Utilities don't need to stop spending. They will just not get faster cost recovery than what is allowed under normal utility regulation. And that regulation worked well for a century before STRIDE was enacted by the General Assembly in 2013. That said, we do think a prohibition on accelerated cost recovery will slow spending because it reduces the speed at which utilities can grow their profits. The second point is that accelerated cost recovery increases rates and costs for customers much faster than normal rate making. And we have lots of graphs and data on our website showing how infrastructure spending corresponds to higher rates. An example is BGE that was spending in 2014 $272 per customer on gas infrastructure. This is from reports and data that we have put out there in recent years. After 8 years of accelerated cost recovery in 2022, BG was spending almost $700 per customer. That's $400 more. And that has driven up rates to the point now where BGE's rates are about 3 times higher today than before accelerated cost recovery. Columbia's rates have more than tripled. So it cannot really be reasonably disputed that accelerated cost recovery grows rates and grows utility profits. And that's why utilities talk to their investors about STRIDE and similar mechanisms and promote them. The third point is that safety is not an issue. Accelerated recovery is a financial mechanism, not a safety mechanism. The STRIDE statute itself doesn't establish any different safety requirements for utilities, and a core obligation of the gas utilities is to provide safe and reliable service. And there's lots of data and numerous reports and recent reports showing that infrastructure spending is not leading to fewer safety incidents. Explosions are usually caused by outside forces or human error, not by older pipes. And there's no evidence in Maryland that older pipes have caused any of the recent explosions in Maryland. Again, we have information on our website on that. The fourth point is that accelerated cost recovery is inconsistent with how technology is developing and with the state's climate goals. Gas appliances are facing very stiff competition from electric appliances. I think a lot of people on this call are aware of that. They're 3 or 4 times more efficient than gas. Per customer gas consumption is declining in Maryland, and we have documented that before in testimony before the PSC and in other places. BGE has acknowledged that meeting the state climate goals requires substantial reductions in gas usage, 75, 80%, it has said, in gas volume. The rate increases are being compounded by declining customer consumption. And rates, of course, are a calculation of utility costs and sales volumes. And as sales volumes drop, rates go up even faster, leading even more customers to choose electric alternatives to avoid high gas rates, which leads to even more rate increases. And that's what we call the death spiral that will hurt tenants and low-income customers the most. Again, we've documented this in a 2025 gas spending report and in previous reports. So why do we need this recommendation? And we need it because other legislative and efforts and PSC efforts are not really moving the dime forward. They're moving very slowly. Legislation can move things much quicker than litigated proceedings at the PSC. Statutes leave less room for utilities to bog things down in litigation at the PSC, and leaving matters to be litigated at the PSC over extended periods means things are slow to change, if they change at all, and it also means significant expenditures of state resources. And we can see that at the PSC, at our office, MEA, MDE, which are participating in the future of gas proceeding. And in the meantime, the forces of inertia means the spending continues and long-term utility costs are locked in for decades. And to put that in perspective, Maryland gas utilities are spending about $750 million a year on gas infrastructure. Give 2 quick examples. We first published a report on the totaling the gas spending of the utilities in 2022, almost 4 years ago. We filed our petition with the PSC for a future of gas proceeding in February 2023, 3.5 years ago. But nothing has changed over that time. We're going to have an evidentiary proceeding, and that will lead to a recommendation by the special master, not a PSC decision. A PSC decision could take substantially longer. We need that proceeding, but in the meantime, we need to make progress, and this would be modest progress by just stopping the accelerated cost recovery. Another example is Next Generation Energy Act, which was effective June 1st, 2025, to require demonstrations of customer benefits and consideration of alternatives to the highest cost strategy of wholesale pipe replacement and cost effectiveness. And that statute, first of all, it doesn't apply to, it's not being applied to BGE at all, because BGE is not doing its work under the STRIDE program. It's doing it under its multi-year rate plan. So it's not even applicable to BGE's work. And for Washington Gas is proceeding with its 2026 projects without having demonstrated compliance with the Next Generation Energy Act, despite its effective date of more than a year ago. Washington Gas recently told the commission that under the current process, how the PSC is moving forward, it wouldn't be able to show compliance with the statute until its 2028 project list. So that's 2.5 years after the Next Gen Act became effective. In the rulemaking proceeding to implement the NGEA, Washington Gas is proposing regs that largely would allow business to continue as usual. So to wrap up, I'll just point out that it's common for the General Assembly to legislate on matters that are already subject to PSC proceedings. It happens all the time. 2 examples are electric system planning. 7803 and 804, the Public Utilities article, I believe they were enacted in 2022, maybe 2023. But they dealt with electric system planning, where the PSC had a process in place that started years before that. We also saw that with multi-year rate plans and reconciliations that were addressed both in the NGEA and in the Utility Relief Act this year. And both of those addressed multi-year rate plans, which have been part of a PSC pilot program that started in 2019 and for which is still outstanding. So the legislature commonly inserts itself to provide guidance or to change the course or maybe to speed things up for matters that are pending before PSC proceedings. So that is nothing unusual. So I know I'm about at time, so I'll stop there. I don't know if you have time, Mark, for any questions or anything, but if not, we're available.
Yeah, thank you, David. And we do have time for questions. And David made a process point early on that I meant to mention. This year, several individual commission members made recommendations. Those recommendations were forwarded to different working groups for review. The working groups have the opportunity to provide feedback, input on those recommendations, but the working groups are not beholden to advancing those recommendations as their own top priorities. They're welcome to provide feedback. Individual commissioners are free to bring their own recommendations directly to the commission. So the opportunity here, and for the David Smetic recommendation 13, which we'll turn to in a few minutes, is primarily for the working group to provide feedback on these recommendations. So with that, are there any questions or comments in response to David Lapp's presentation? Garrett, go ahead.
Just a question on that piece is that I think both of these recommendations are in the top half of recommendations for sure that I would support. But to clarify, are you saying that if we are supportive of either of the David's recommendations, we don't need to count them in R4 and they are still effectively supported, or is it a good idea for us to include them in R4?
Let me clarify 2 things on that. One, the fact that we don't prioritize them does not mean we oppose them. Okay. We'll select a top 4, we'll say a priority. We don't take a yes or no vote on whether others should be advanced. Secondly, the members who are commissioners are free to make the proposal in the commission, okay, which is what these 2 are. Or I think that's more than 2. And so it's not like we've got the ability to forbid them from being brought up anyway. So I think the question is whether we want to suggest that these should be one of our priority 4, but we don't in any way endorse or oppose them if we don't include them in our top 4.
Okay, that's helpful. Especially if one of them ends up as number 5 or 6 for us, it's good to know that it may still have life, even if it's not in our top 4, because it's hard to choose from all these great ideas.
I also want to point out for some of the new members that when we go to the commission and have to report our working group recommendations, the ones that may also be considered, we report on whether or not the mitigation work group discussed it and voted on it and what the votes are. So our opinion or our actions we transmit that to the whole commission as well.
Ed,
Hey, Mark, can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah, just want to thank both David and Scott for their input into this discussion around this recommendation. I think that a lot of the comments I have, I'll save because they can be found in the joint utilities letter that was shared by Jared earlier this week. The thing that I just want to, emphasize here is that the STRIDE statute is a result, as I understand it, of a call to action from the Pipeline Hazardous Materials and Safety Administration that understands that some of the aging pipe materials that we are replacing do carry safety risks, which is an important consideration for both the utilities and the PSC. And though, replacing these pipes and what will happen to these pipes over the long term do, of course, carry important considerations for what that means for climate in the state, what that means for affordability in the state. Because there are multiple important considerations for replacing these pipes, such as safety, that is why these proceedings are being handled in evidentiary proceeding that's going on with the PSC right now. And though I do understand kind of the emphasis and the need to move quickly for climate, of course, it is the appropriate forum, in my opinion, for these questions to be handled is through the ongoing proceedings that are already happening and noted in the letter. So that we can get to, other topics today, I'll leave it there for time, but happy to carry on this discussion further, in this form or others. Thank you for your time.
And before we go on, just time check, right? Because we've got an awful lot we've got to discuss today in wordsmithing. If I understand David Lapp correctly, he's not asking for this to be one of the top four. On the preliminary vote, it only received 4 votes. So I doubt that there's going to be a majority to move it to the top 4 if he's, in fact, not even asking for it to be moved to the top 4. So I would suggest that there are, respectfully, that there are an awful lot of work we got to do, and we've already used the first half hour.
Okay, I just want to, flag that I can defer and not respond, but I disagree with the comments that were just made respectfully. The PSC proceeding will continue, and there is really nothing that is contrary to federal law. In fact, what we think we're advocating for is very consistent with the requirements of the Pipeline Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, which is what really oversees pipeline safety. We're very familiar with that. We've submitted a lot of testimony, but I'm not going to, fully respond to that right now in the interest of
time. If I can, just in the interest of time, I'll suggest that those debates be referred to the commission unless there are strong objections. Why don't we go on to the next presentation? And thank you, though. Okay, Mark, you want to put Jamie up?
You mean David Smedick?
Oh, David Smedick. I'm sorry. What if I was thinking Jamie? But it's Jamie, so it's David Smedick's proposal. Yes.
Honored to be confused with David.
Nobody confused me with him. So.
Well, and Jamie, you've inspired me to get shorter hair anyway, so I'm taking after you now.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, it looks very good.
I appreciate it. Mark, do you want me to just dive in, or do you want to set it up at all?
No setup needed. Go ahead.
I will add this though.
Yeah.
Jamie's proposal is one of the 5. It tied with 2 others among the 5, so it would be in the contention. Go ahead, David.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, and thank you to Commissioner Lapp for the presentation on his recommendation, and just thank you for continuing to bring that to the mitigation working group and the Commission's attention. That's an important issue. I'm glad we're keeping the conversation flowing on it over all these years. So for mine, there's some similarities in the sense of the focus area for the recommendation that I have is around highly efficient electrified appliances. And it's specific this year related to seizing the opportunity to switch from one-way central air conditioners, or not central necessarily, but one-way air conditioners to highly efficient electrified heat pumps. And I want to preface this one with, it took me a while to craft this because the emphasis and the appreciation that I have for Senate Bill 12 from this past legislative session is great. I think this is a really important piece of legislation that was signed into law and moved forward. And essentially what Senate Bill 12 from this past session does is it requires landlords of rental units to provide air conditioning if it is not currently available for their properties. And this is really, really important. I think that it hits home for this working group and the commission as a whole. As you probably saw, I think it was last week, the news came out that we have crossed a really horrible, in my opinion, threshold of heat-related deaths this summer. In Maryland, we have 50 plus heat-related deaths as we are dealing with increased extreme weather in the state driven by some climate change. And so the importance of having access to air conditioning is absolutely critical. And the recommendation that I have, what I want to get some feedback on from the mitigation working group is ensuring that the spirit and the requirements, I mean, they're in law, their requirements are going to go forward anyway, but the importance of ensuring that there's cooling services provided to folks across the state is really critically important. And the intention of this recommendation, if it were to go forward and be acted upon, is not meant to disrupt access to cooling services in any way, shape, or form. So with that like small preface there, I wanted to reemphasize what Mark, Mike, and David have also said. I am one of the commissioners on the full commission. I will be presenting this to the full commission. I want to have a discussion with you all today about it, get some feedback if there need to be some tweaks. I want to accept that and appreciate it, and that's what I'm here to do today. So the actual content of the recommendation is essentially to look at the opportunity that's coming forward now with the passage of the Senate bill this past year, is that there are going to be landlords that have to look at what kinds of technologies they can bring to their facilities for their residents. And I think there's an opportunity to have heat pumps over one-way air conditioners. These machines are very similar. You essentially install a reversing valve in an air conditioner and you get a heat pump. There's a lot more nuance within that in the mechanical design there, but essentially you're looking at a machine that you could plop into a centralized ducting system. You could have ductless split systems. You could have new window units that provide heating services as well as cooling services. For the last 6-7 years or so, this commission has done a lot of recommendations related to building decarbonization and deploying more heat pumps. I think this is an opportunity for us to identify a new law and a new requirement in the state where we could be ensuring that heat pumps are deployed to provide both cooling and heating services. So the gist of what I'm proposing is to have the MEA, DHCD, the Attorney General's office, and any other relevant agencies pull together an action plan to identify how and when it's appropriate to have the landlords work to have heat pumps installed rather than those air conditioners. So again, with new form factors, say the window unit heat pumps that are coming onto the market now, or ductless systems that can be installed in multifamily buildings, you see that all over the country. I think this is an opportunity, and it can be very cost effective. In my day job, I've been doing a lot of research more on the single family home side of things, but there's a lot of results you can draw into the multifamily space as well, where if you have replacing a one-way air conditioner with a heat pump drives economic savings for folks. So I'm going to pause there because I'm rambling a little bit at this point. It's a pretty self-explanatory one, I think, but would love some feedback and questions as I prep for the full commission presentation later in the year.
I guess I'm up first.
Yeah.
A comment, and I think a favorable comment. Just a story. I was asked, I guess more than a year ago now, the ABLE Foundation had asked me to give a presentation on building energy performance standards, and there were a lot of people there who from the affordable housing industry who were very concerned about the cost of BEPS. But I see your proposal as helping with that significantly, because to the extent there is resources provided to support providing heat pumps for affordable housing, it could help with an issue that they were very concerned with, is what is the impact on what kind of rents they would have to charge in affordable housing to afford the capital they had to raise to upgrade. So I think there are some very useful aspects of this proposal.
Thanks, Spike. And I won't steal Nicola's thunder here, but I think MDE and DHCD just announced a new initiative to help with BEPS compliance within the affordable housing market.
I think they fit together well.
Yeah. This could, anyway, I'll pause, but thank you.
Ian?
Thanks, Mike. And David, two quick questions or points. You mentioned that you were doing some research. I think one question that is likely to come up in the full commission, if not here, is what is the incremental cost of that little switch that you were talking about? And then the other issue I would just want to sort of get your thought on is what, if anything, does it have to do with having gas in the home or in the multifamily? Is there any connection between with it having a gas furnace? I would just consider that, and I'd be happy to let Nicola go, and then you can think about your answer, maybe just in the interest of time. But those are two issues I can imagine might come up.
Sure thing. Happy to take the additional comments from Nicola and Tom, and if we have time, I'll provide some quick feedback, but also take more of it back.
Hi. I am curious to get a little bit more background on whether there was already research done or a determination made that the current approach of the administration and the state agencies for this effort are insufficient, or whether this is sort of asking for that information of what is the current strategy and plan, and then determine whether it is sufficient or requires any changes.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola. My 2 cents on that. For one, I definitely drafted it before the new initiative that y'all announced related to the BEPS and the affordable housing work there. So I kind of knew that was going on in the background, but the announcement is helpful to hear. And the impetus was really specifically the passage of the legislation and recognizing this new requirement that was being placed on some of the landlords, and wanting to make sure that while they are going to have to evaluate how they deliver air conditioning to their tenants, that they have information in front of them about the opportunity to install heat pumps instead. And so I think there's probably a lot of essentially I wanted to make sure that the initiatives that we do have within the state are identifying this intervention point very clearly and concisely for those landlords that are going to have to make those upgrades, and that they're getting the information about whether their incentives or the benefits that they could bring to their tenants are there. So that I wouldn't say I did a full landscaping of and came to a conclusion that some of the work we were doing already was insufficient. But I think that really nailing and zeroing in on this new requirement on this stakeholder group was we were taking advantage of that if we could. Does that make sense? Okay. Happy to connect offline, but I'll also take that to heart. Thanks.
Tom, you want to go?
Sure, thanks. Just want to clarify, David, you're mentioning Senate Bill 12, but you're not suggesting that it be amended to require heat pump technologies as part of it. So are you talking about a basket of incentives and lowering barriers to installation, or are we talking about mandating that there be heat pump technologies?
This recommendation does not suggest an amendment to the bill or to the bill's already done, a new introduction of legislation to do that. No. I'll leave it at that. No, so it wouldn't be a requirement. It would be, how do we break down market barriers to having this become a norm for the landlords? Yeah.
My other question, I think you answered previously about how it fits into existing incentive programs.
Yeah.
You mentioned, you cite New York, for example. What New York went beyond incentivizing heat pump technologies and was helping to develop new technologies that might work better in apartment buildings. Are you suggesting the state head that direction or do something differently in that direction?
Well, one of the benefits of the way that New York went about is they essentially had, what is it, like an X prize or whatever for the development of new form factors of heat pumps. So the window unit heat pumps that look similar to window unit air conditioners, although I think a little bit better designed. Those products now exist on the market. What could be an interesting tactic for the state of Maryland could be to look at how New York City is approaching that in terms of bulk purchasing. It drives down some of the price, but working with some of the manufacturers that now have those kinds of products, if there's an opportunity to pool purchasing power, say of the landlords that now have to do this, you might be able to get a cheaper per unit price for those kinds of products. So the technology now exists. The question is, how do you get that technology at the right cost to these folks? So could the state facilitate, maybe one of the things that could be in this recommendation is an example of how the state could facilitate a bulk purchase with those landlords to drive that kind of adoption. I'm shooting at the hip, so I have to think about whether or not that's realistic or not, but that's one example. Does that?
Since we haven't heard from any of the multifamily people on this subject, it seems to me if the language could clarify and make it obvious that you're looking for, a way to coordinate incentives around this, it would help me, but thank you.
Okay. No, that makes sense, Tom. Thanks.
Okay, with no other comments, let me suggest this is a way to proceed. We have 5 that, and maybe you can put them on the screen, Mark, or do we have the voting list in a form you can show?
I can, I could either pull it up in the email, or for the highlighted ones, I could just add the straw vote count to them, if that'd be helpful.
What I would recommend is that we go through and do a little bit of comment and wordsmithing on the 5, and then because there may be changes or not, or understandings about what it means, much like what we just heard with Tom and David about clarifying that it was for incentives, and then we can take a vote on which 4 from the 5. I mean, you could take less than 4, but I assume we're going to pick 4. 4 of the 5 we will advance to the commission as our priorities. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yes.
Okay. You want to go to the first one, the revised EV incentive program? On this one, by the way, I think we just got a written comment came in. I saw it in my email from Rivian on this one, being supportive of it. This is a program. I'm just going to try to give a flat description of it, and then if people want to speak in favor of it or against it or whatever. But it's a California program for first-time buyers of EVs, where there's a matching grant from the state to the manufacturer of the EVs. It's only for first-time buyers and only for EVs priced below $60,000. So I think there's some exceptions in there for things like Rivians and Lucids or something. The idea is if somebody buys a EV, they're likely to continue buying EVs. I just saw a press report, by the way, that said that the Tesla part of this sold out in 5 days, that they had that many first-time buyers of EVs to completely buy the program. So it certainly seems to be effective. And I don't think we saw any opposition from any of the dealers or manufacturers. As I said, I think we just got a comment from Rivian in support of it. But let me open it for comments, and including comments on anybody who want to suggest wordsmithing of this.
One quick comment is that I got a call from Scout Motors in support of this recommendation.
Garrett?
Yeah, I just just one comment on this. When I talked with our EV folks over here in Montgomery County about all of the EV related ideas, and they had a strong preference for this one out of the set of things as most effective, with the condition that, you know, it's really dependent on how big that pool of money is. And I think this is something we could comment on, but obviously it's up to the legislature what budget they put with this. But it's obviously effective. It's very frustrating and can be create challenges for the market if it's advertised as a thing for first-time buyers and then it runs out very quickly and for the year, so to speak, and then buyers end up sitting and waiting to make this decision till later and end up not buying an EV and sort of missing the window when they're going to make a car purchase because it wasn't around. And so I think it's just very important, if we do move this forward, and I do support it, that we acknowledge or we recognize that it's very important it be sufficiently funded where it will be available to all the first-time buyers for the year and not something that runs out too quickly to be effective as a market mechanism. Thanks.
Kim?
Thank you, Garrett. I like this one a lot. And I don't know that we can recommend that it be fully funded for every first-time car buyer that wants it. I mean, that, especially during a budget deficit year that we're going to have. However, we could make a recommendation where the funds are distributed equitably across 4 quarters, so that at least, you know, you don't have to decide in January. You could decide in July or October. So maybe there's an amendment there that we can add that would distribute funds throughout the year.
Okay, any other comments or wordsmithing on this one? Okay, why don't we
I'm
go?
sorry, Mike, one other thing. Kim Pezza couldn't be on the call, but had sent me some comments, and she is a little concerned about the LMI folks and wondered if there was a way to possibly have a higher incentive for low to moderate income households.
I mean, if someone wants to propose an amendment to the language, we could consider that. My own view of that is I would be very cautious about trying to alter a program that passed in California and has been implemented, because I think our best chance of getting this adopted is to adopt the California program here. And I don't, you know, but obviously if someone wants to make a motion to amend the language, we can entertain that. But hearing none, I guess we'll go on to number 2. There's a little bit of overlap between this, and I think Jennifer pointed this out in chat, between this and a proposal from ECO. At the Commission Steering Committee meeting this week, that was pointed out and discussed. ECO's, if I'm correctly summarizing this, ECO's view is that theirs is a little bit different in terms of specificity, that there are particular issues that they want to stress. We had asked for them to further consider whether they thought they could be combined in some way, if not now at the workforce level, at the commission level. But thus far, there did not seem to be an interest in ECO in committing to combining them and thereby eliminating them. So I think at least my read of that response is, at least as of the current time, that's a proposal that is still live. Jarrett, you got more information on that?
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so just a little bit of nuance to add to that. Yes, the ECO recommendation is very similar to this. I would like to add that ECO, I think, is very open to collaborating with the MWG to find that middle ground between the language and the 2 separate recommendations, so that everybody's satisfied with that outcome. So yeah, definitely room to collaborate between the groups.
Yeah, I think that's fair. What they were suggesting is they might collaborate, but I don't think either work group was willing to sort of drop and defer to the others, at least at this point. It's more a desire to find at the commission level some sort of compromise. Garrett?
Have we seen what they're doing? When you say it's similar, I mean, it's very heartening because it feels like if it is actually similar,
They
it's
have
easy to
not.
drop this one and do the other four. But is there one liner
I'll put
you
it in
can
the
share with us?
I'll put it
Yeah.
in the chat, Garrett.
Put it in the chat. My understanding is they have not yet voted, though. So it is like ours, merely a proposal, which is subject to wordsmithing. My understanding, and I don't attend the eco work groups, the understanding is that there were people there who had very strong opinions about focusing. And that's where they would need to find some compromise with our focusing on what specifically they were targeting. For example, one of the issues that came up where we include in the ECHO, they include things like train stops, light rail, marked cars as being, it's very much of a DOT focused non-car alternative proposal. Ours were very much focused on an EV proposal. So that's where there are some differences.
Sounds like you're discussing some interesting transportation proposals.
I don't know why
I
my
don't have
Alexa is
specific
going off there now, but it's it doesn't mean that they're not compromises that can be worked out, but I can't tell you what ECO will or will not accept. There are some differences now. Darren, maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, so Jim Joyner of State Highway Administration, who's part of MDOT, is on the ECO working group, and we're speaking with them about changes to the language, actually to include EVs and to be broader, I think, than what's here. I guess procedurally, though, Mike, I'm wondering if there is something that is substantively similar enough, and this one strikes me as being in that category, that's being discussed by two working groups. Couldn't both working groups support one recommendation?
They could if there was one recommendation. Our problem is its time is running out. We've got to vote on something today, and ECHO, at least as of the commission meeting, we're not prepared to adopt ours, right? We could simply say we're not going to include this among our four, and we're going to leave it to ECHO to do whatever they want to do, and you see what their current proposal is. The alternative is that we send both of them to the commission, and the commission combines them into one. There's something to be said for that because it will be a stronger recommendation of coming from two work groups, but then of course it also reduces the number of recommendations, if you will, because if they're two are much the same. But that's the status of it. I think what we have to do is we can decide, no, we're not going to take it. We're going to leave it to ECHO with a suggestion that that they try to use some of our language. We could advance ours and suggest that ECHO drops it, or we can simply adopt ours and let them take whatever action they want. But
Mike and Mark, I think process-wise, my recommendation is to go through the others, and then when we come back to the question is, do we feel strongly enough that this becomes one of the four?
Agreed.
And at this point, we can park that, if you will, and discuss the others, and then come back to that.
Agreed. So are there any wordsmithing on this one that someone wants to propose before we go on to the next? Okay, Mark, you want to go to number 8? Okay. Garrett, this one was yours. Do you want to say anything about it?
I mean, it's pretty short and simple. So we're saying this is not asking for money from the state budget, right? We're saying that the General Assembly should pass some form of policy that would require new large data centers to meet some significant portion of their energy needs. So we're not defining exactly how much. And of course, it's more satisfying if we did define exactly how much, but I also think there's, to some extent, limited value in fighting over that at this stage, because everyone will fight over that. If someone actually takes up a bill on this, that's when the fight over that will happen. But let's meet a portion of the energy use of these new data centers through some combination of buying clean energy and investments in our communities that actually reduce energy use. And that's the piece that I think is most interesting here. I personally believe that, and you all have seen that across, if you look at NACO's information or anywhere else in the news, you've seen that a lot of us counties have been enacting moratoria on data center development, not because we're against it ever happening in Maryland, but because we want to think about it and make sure we're getting it right. One of the things that we're talking about a little bit is if we were to allow these data centers to come online, and we know we need to deal with the fact that they're requiring a lot of energy that isn't available on the grid right now. This added demand, we're using up all the energy that's on the grid right now. So we got to make sure the supply is growing. And from a climate standpoint, that supply needs to be clean. It needs to not all be coal. So how do you get at those things? One option would be to try to require these data centers bring on new clean energy to meet all of their demand. A second option would be that let's get what we can by reducing the amount of energy we use now elsewhere in society, and then buy clean energy for the rest that we need. And I think that that's a really exciting opportunity, which if I were the data center industry, I would be actively talking about, because it's possible to create a lot of local benefits if we were to, for example, receive revenue from a new data center that might be coming in that could be used to make energy upgrades to all of the low-income housing in the surrounding community, to help with that offsetting of the new energy demand of the facility. And then let's buy clean energy for the rest of it, or some portion of the rest of it. And that's, there'll be policy fights around that. But I think that's an important piece of the concept here. I think this is pretty general, high level language. So we're pointing very clearly to the General Assembly that this is one of the key issues that needs to be dealt with in policy. We're not being super prescriptive about exactly how they do it, but we're pointing at the importance of making progress on this issue. And I think that that's a very important thing for us to do.
Because I feel so strongly about this one, I'm gonna go ahead and put in my comment, and then later, I strongly oppose it as written. And I'll explain why, because there's multiple reasons. One, the whole purpose of this work group is to debate issues and come up with reasoned and careful consideration. We had no discussion of data centers until the last 10 minutes of the last meeting after the deadline for submitted of proposals. So I don't believe, in my opinion, that this work group has done the work they're supposed to do before submitting a recommendation. Secondly, there's no need for speed on this. 16 of the 24 jurisdictions as of last count adopted moratoriums. So no data centers are going to be developed in the meantime. Would give us time to study this carefully and get it right. Third, I think people are clearly underestimating what this does. After the meeting, because I don't know anybody had ever looked at it during the work group session, I went and did a little bit of research. For a medium-sized data center using solar in this state, and solar is the only renewable power we've got unless we can find some way to fast-speed nuclear, you're talking about 1,300 acres. For a large data center, you're talking about 100,000 acres of solar, plus the batteries to back it up. I think that as written, this would be committing us to something to say, we don't build the data centers here, we build them in Texas, where they'll be fossil fuel. Or we build them in West Virginia, where they'll keep the coal plants open. And remember that we already import 40% of our power from other states. If we're building the data centers there, they just won't send the power to us. What I would suggest, and which I could support, is that instead this work group look at this issue, or at best recommend the General Assembly look at the issue, and spend some time studying it. Instead of us saying this is the answer when we spent no time discussing it, I suggest that the recommendation be that the issue be examined and studied for the adoption eventually, as the moratoriums expire, of the appropriate standards. Kim?
Yeah, thank you, Garrett. Probably in direct counter to my co-chair partner, I like this recommendation a lot, and I think it actually aligns with what the mitigation work group is designed to do. Our process does not prohibit an idea from being introduced and voted on. And that's what happened, right? Yes, conversation would be helpful, but this doesn't prevent us. We are not prohibited from evaluating and voting on these recommendations right now. The thing about this one, unlike maybe any others, is that it really pertains to emission reductions. And we want to make sure that data centers come to Maryland, but we want to make sure that there's clean energy sources, thus reducing emissions impacts, which is our call to action. So I think it's great. Now, having said that, there might be some ways to tweak it so that there's a little bit of a little bit more flexibility on how it gets implemented. So I can take a look, and Garrett, maybe possibly you as well, on some ways to just build in a little bit more flexibility on actions. But I think it's great, and I think we should definitely move ahead with it.
Before going to Jamie, because I forgot to, I do have a proposed language change, which I can share now or share after we've had everybody's comments on your choice, that would basically make it a study rather than a commitment to take action.
I mean, feel free to share that. I know there is an ongoing study right now that MEA is doing, so I'm reluctant to recommend another study, would be my feelings about that, but happy to take a look.
Can I share my screen? And then we will come to you, Jamie and Brian. Mark, can I share my screen so at least I show the recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see here. Make sure I show the right one. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
I've tried to preserve as much of Garrett's language as we can, and I simply said that there should be, so the General Assembly would still get legislation, but to study whether they should be required to require a significant portion of the energy needs through new clean energy and storage. You could wordsmith it more and say, and how that would be done, or what the requirements would be, but it would put the issue in legislation without necessarily mandating that it be done before we think about what that means. Then I don't want to hog the screen. If people have had a chance to read it, then we can go on to Jamie's comment.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Garrett, for bringing this recommendation. I would support this recommendation as introduced. I think that data centers are causing a lot of increased emissions as well as increased energy prices. There's a hyperscaler that's trying to mine Bitcoin that is being proposed to transform a retired coal plant into a new natural gas plant that would significantly increase emissions. So I think it would be helpful to have this recommendation out there. I do think that solar is an option for meeting new electricity demand, and the numbers you laid out are, I think, comparable, are correct for how much solar would be used, but that is feasible. But I think even more feasible, as the report that Francis referenced in the chat shows, that you can free up more capacity on the grid in a clean way by replacing resistance heat with heat pumps that use a third of the electricity. So as Garrett was suggesting, you could offer to install new HVAC systems for lots of households. It's great for people. It's great for emissions. It frees up grid on the space for the space on the grid for the data centers. And so I think this is a good requirement to move forward as a recommendation.
Brian?
I support the proposal that Mike put forward to examine this recommendation a bit further. I mean, having worked in this space, at Constellation for quite some time, I can say that this is a quite a thorny issue. And there are a lot of sort of overlapping initiatives that this affects. And I think it's worth sort of getting a handle on how those other initiatives are playing out to better understand how to safely and reliably and do so and integrate large loads in a manner that is, meets our emissions objectives for the state. So just as an example, Maryland is currently in the process of adopting a model large load tariff. So a retail rate framework for accommodating new large loads that offsets the potential rate impacts on other customers. There's quite a bit of work happening at PJM to manage resource adequacy at the pool-wide level, and that obviously affects Maryland as a member of the PJM footprint. That work is ongoing. There will be some proposals issued by PJM to FERC that will, I think, better define how to integrate these loads in a way, again, that sort of mitigates ratepayer costs and ensures reliability going forward. There's already an RPS, right, which I think would accommodate some of the load introduced into the state and require that it's met with clean energy. This may be an issue better addressed as part of a broader RPS reform to ensure that all loads are treated in the same way. And again, I think we're at risk of kind of creating a bunch of overlapping requirements that may work across purposes, and we haven't really, we've really barely scratched the surface on it. So I think this is a potentially a fruitful avenue to go down, but I really would caution moving forward at this early stage and take some time to really unpack what this means and how all these overlapping requirements and initiatives play out to make sure that this is both a sustainable and a beneficial recommendation going forward. So again, just I'll say that it's worthy of delving into further. I just think rushing forward at this point would potentially advance something that isn't quite baked.
Tom?
So I'll just endorse what Michael and Brian have said recently, particularly the energy impacts messaging that Brian just provided for us, or information about what's happening at PSC, at FERC, at PJM level. The notion that we're going to create sector-specific energy requirements is, rather than work within the RPS, is a concern. And the compliance pathway here, it's my understanding that some of the larger data center providers have made commitments to get where Garrett's proposal would take us, or take them, but they might not be able to do that till 2030. Are we saying that we're going to shut these down for several years in order to meet the requirements of the proposal? I think we need to understand what the implications are and what the compliance options are. And the notion, I think, it's a new dimension that Garrett provided today that I didn't really understand, of making offsite requirements as kind of an entitlement requirement, right, to upgrade existing housing in a jurisdiction. That's an exaction that's very intrusive and really pushes the envelope quite a bit. We haven't had any testimony or input from the data center providers. And the other thing that concerns me is that the definition of data center can go from a reasonably large server room in an office building to a hyperscale kind of facility. And we're talking in broad terms about applying this to all of those facilities without any kind of finer focus. I think Michael's proposal addresses those problems by having us take a look at it and get the benefit of the other research studies and the tariff work that's being done.
Okay, why don't we take William and Kim, and then if it's, everybody agrees, we'll call the question on my amendment, and then we can go on. William?
Oh, sure. I'll try to be very quick. We support this as written and not amended.
I think what's on the table is my proposed amendment. Do you need me to share that again?
No, I've yes seen it to move it to a study. I don't think this is, this isn't a that out of the blue proposal. It's being considered in a lot of contexts and a lot of jurisdictions. They're often called, just for everyone's edification, Beyonce laws. Bring your own new clean energy. So it's an established policy. It's not some sort of 11th hour out of the blue thing. And I, again, just don't see the need for study. I think there's also a lot of flexibility baked into it as drafted already, as I see it. But so that's my 2 cents.
Kim?
Let's see. I guess I have given all the comments that Brian made about the work that's going on, I don't even know that. I guess my question is for Brian. Brian, given all the what is not determined, all the questions, all the work that's going on, would you suggest that we just wait and not even do a study? That's one point or question. And then if that's the case, then I would suggest an amendment. If we're going to move forward with the study, I would suggest an amendment that says the study results need to be in before any new building of hyperscale data centers is allowed, so that we get to look and study it, but we're also not hurting ourselves in the meantime.
Brian?
I would recommend a study. I think that could proceed even while these other initiatives are happening and unfolding. This is all sort of like it's happening in real time, but I don't think that should preclude us from delving deeper into this and trying to better understand what kinds of clean energy requirements should be assigned to new large loads in the state. Would I recommend that we propose a statewide moratorium on large load development while this?
That's not what I'm suggesting, Brian. I never said that.
Well,
I said but just for clarity,
then.
What I'm suggesting is that if we're going to move forward with the study, that we would temporarily pause the building, any new building, not existing, new building of hyperscalers, so that it gives us time. I mean, we have two objectives here. One is to advance the industry, but to do it in a way that doesn't harm ratepayers, doesn't harm our environment, doesn't harm our quality of life. In order to do that, let's pause it. Let's do the study that y'all suggesting. And then once the study results are in there, we're going to know better about how to move forward with the building of them. So it's a temporary pause. I never said moratorium.
Yeah, one just issue there, Kim, just to remind you, I think all of the jurisdictions where hyperscales would be built have already adopted 6-month moratoriums. So there's already a 6-month.
There's no conflict in us supporting that then.
No. But I'm just saying that they're just to clarify the facts that there's already a 6-month moratorium. Now you're proposing what could be longer, right? If the study takes more than 6 months.
Yeah, how long do you think your study's going to take?
I don't know, because we've spent no time talking about what this is involved. But anyway, I don't want to devolve this. We said we're going to call the question, but the original offer of it, Garrett has raised his hand. So why don't we let Garrett raise his hand, then we'll try to take the amendment up for a vote. Garrett?
Thanks, Mike, and I very much appreciate the conversation. I wouldn't take the amendment as the amendment proposed here on the screen. I don't take that as a friendly amendment. I think it's inappropriate to do a study to ask if we ought to do something, because I think it's abundantly clear that we need to do something, and that the solution to this problem is not simply through RPS reform. The nature of the energy demand of, and I said in here, new large data centers. In my mind, we're talking about the 25 megawatt and up, consistent with language the state has already adopted. But I've been very intentionally vague about that, and about the notion of requiring meeting a significant portion of their energy needs to someone that might be all of their energy needs, to someone else that might be 10% of their energy needs. You can deal with a significant amount of energy at a very low percentage of the energy use of these facilities, given how large the magnitude is of the energy use here. I think it's an absolute given that we should be requiring something. I could see an amendment where we would say, in a general way, we ought to be requiring data centers to meet a significant portion of energy use in the way that I had previously written, where we tack on something at the end that includes, and we should be doing a study to explore how best to bring about those kinds of requirements. I do think that the policymaking process is the space where a lot of those details will get figured out. And I think there's diminishing returns in us trying to have a perfectly formed policy because it's all going to be rewritten anyways. So to me, the main question here is, should the mitigation working group make a strong statement to the General Assembly that this is clearly an area where policy work needs to be done this year? I think that's what my original language does. I hear some support for the amendment. I also hear that the majority of the folks who voted have already signaled support for the language as it was originally written. So I'd prefer to stick with that. Thanks.
Okay, then I think we call the question on, the first question would be just on my amendment. We'll then go on to the others that maybe were finalists, and then we'll come back, and now that we've got wordsmithing of all of them, vote on the final 4 out of the 5. So the issue on the table now is my proposed amendment. Members, including anyone who has proxies, I guess raise your hand if you're in favor of the amendment. And once you've got that count, Jared, let me know and we'll ask for opposition.
So I count 6 in favor of the amendment.
Okay, and then I've got a Bob Wright proxy, so we can make that 7. Okay, take your hands down. Anyone who opposes the amendment?
I see 10 opposed.
Okay, you can take your hands down. Any abstentions?
I see 2 abstaining.
Okay, let's go on to the next proposal, which would be number 9.
Okay.
Would you like me to say?
Yeah, if you want to just refresh everyone on what the recommendation is, that'd be great.
Happy to. And I'm in my car. I'm parked in Salisbury on my way to Mako, so apologize for not being at my desk. But Maryland has the need for more in-state generation. A lot of policy has talked about generating more electricity in-state. Our renewable portfolio standard has been by far our most successful state policy tool for generating more electricity in-state. We now generate more electricity from solar in Maryland than we do from coal, which would have been unthinkable when this policy was invented. But this policy has been, there are parts that have been more successful than others. For example, the in-state solar carve-out has been extremely successful in generating more solar in Maryland that, reduces electricity costs, it creates jobs, it reduces both local air pollution and climate impacts. But there have been other parts that have been less effective, like the generic tier 1 portion of the RPS. The generic tier 1 portion of the RPS is being met almost entirely through alternative compliance payments at this moment. Those alternative compliance payments go into the Strategic Energy Investment Fund, which is used for a lot of great uses. We love MEA and all the great work they do with that money. But the General Assembly has also been raiding that fund to balance the budget, which just means that we, through the generic tier 1 RPS, are mostly, what that policy is doing is balancing the state budget through electricity prices, which is possibly the most regressive way to balance the state budget. So this proposal is just to spend less on the generic tier 1 portion of the RPS and more on the part that is working, which is the in-state solar carve-out. So this would be ratepayer neutral while also resulting in more new in-state electricity generation. We wouldn't be eliminating the tier 1 generic. We would still, leave that. I understand there's a lot of people who like that. There's benefits to it. So that would still exist. But the percentages would shift towards the tier 1, the in-state solar carve-out, which has proven more effective in recent years. And that is, there's also other changes that can be made to the RPS, such as creating better certainty for developers. Renewable energy credits are variable over time, so developers have difficulty going to financiers and pointing to the renewable energy credits since it could crash at any time. And so by creating some more certainty for developers, we can get more bang for every buck we spend. Some other changes like that, but generally encouraging the Maryland General Assembly to revisit our RPS and make smarter, more targeted and strategic investment decisions.
Any questions, comments, or requests for name change? Ian.
Thanks, Mike and Jamie. It's a good suggestion. I'm going to support it. I do want to say that some of the things that you mentioned that have been deemed problematic about tier 1 recs also apply to the carve-out solar recs, right? ACP is also being paid in lieu of buying solar recs in state. But nevertheless, I think it's a good idea to have an examination of the RPS. I think there's a lot that has changed in the industry since the RPS was first established and has been amended over the last few years. And so I think it's a good idea. I think there are some good questions about whether or not we want to utilize, Maryland ratepayer funding for projects out of state. I think that's a good question to have. My instinct is that we do need to refocus it more on in-state generation, and so I'm planning to support it. But I'm just saying it's a complicated issue, and we're not going to be able to solve that here or with this language. So but my general sense is that we should move in this direction, so I'm going to support it.
Appreciate that.
Any other comments, questions? Anyone seeking any name change, any amendment to the language? Brian.
I don't have any proposals for the language. I'm just curious though. I mean, how does I'm not quite sure how this just making a blanket requirement that there's more in-state clean solves the problem. I mean, presumably under the current framework, there would be more in-state clean were it cost effective to do so, and it wasn't capped at a very low ACP, right? So I think, absent addressing like questions like what the ACP levels should be, I don't see just how requiring it more in-state doesn't lead to potentially more ACPs being paid, unless, of course, that ACP is raised to a level that is commensurate with the cost of actually building resources in the state. So this could have, while I completely agree with the broader benefit of wanting to stimulate more in-state clean generation, I'm a little nervous that, without addressing the ACP issue and potentially some others that are, adjacent to the RPS, we might wind up in a situation where we're actually paying more ACPs.
No, that can I respond?
Sure. Yeah.
That is a great question and a great point. Whether or not the value of the alternative compliance payment should be raised, which for people's knowledge, Maryland has a much lower alternative compliance payment than any other state in our region, would be part of this larger RPS enhancement discussion. So even though the ACP value isn't named in this body of text, that is absolutely one of the things that would be considered in this overhauling of the system here.
Okay, any other questions, comments, possible word change? Then let's go to the last one, which I think you already discussed at some length already, but David, anything else you want to add here?
No, just a reminder, I mean, similar to Commissioner Lapp's, if the working group has, you're limited to 4, right? If you're really like 4 other ones.
No more than 4, I think is
no
way
more than 4, yeah.
I
So,
assume you're going to do 4.
know that I am very comfortable presenting this to the full commission as a standalone. If you all really like the other 4, want to make sure that those 4 are included. And this is, say, the 5th, but based on our discussion, I got general positive feedback from folks. I might make a couple of changes based on some conversation with Tom there. I am comfortable moving this forward on my own, if that's the will of the mitigation working group. I don't know if I said that quite right. I think, Mark, at the top of the call, you said it a little more eloquently, but as an FYI.
Well, let me make sure I'm right. You're not withdrawing it. You're just saying that if it doesn't make the top 4, you'll still present it to the commission.
Yes. And I want the mitigation working group comfortable with, yeah, I'm not withdrawing this from the commission process. No.
Okay. Mark and Jared, what's the best way for us to compile a list of the top 4 from those 5? I'm just thinking physically how we vote.
Yeah, I think that if we could proceed with, as we just did on an amendment, with hand raised votes going all the way back up to number 1, and we would just go through, and on these 5 recommendations that were identified as, top recommendations from the July vote, it sounds like today there's some good discussion about them. Maybe that changes people's votes, maybe it doesn't. We could do 4 opposed and abstaining on each of the 5, and then if there is of those 5, if one of them winds up with fewer votes for, then that could be, or I suppose it would be, dropped off, and the 4 recommendations with the highest vote count would advance.
Yeah, with just the reminder that people can vote. And the vote for is not do I favor it or disfavor it. It's do I favor it being one of my top 4 priorities. So you can vote a no, meaning you'd still support it, but just not as your top 4. And also that you can only vote for 4. You can't vote for all 5, right? You can no more than 4 votes. Does that sound fair? Okay, for number 1, all those in favor, raise their hand. Yeah.
Sorry, Mike, just before we get there, I wanted to, Garrett put a question in the chat regarding number 2. Can we also vote on whether to encourage ECO to try to incorporate our ideas into their EV education idea? I think that, as I'll double down on something Mike said earlier. I think that we can only control here what the MWG chooses to advance. The other working groups, for what it's worth, other working groups like STWG are considering their own data center recommendation right now, their own transportation focused recommendations. This is not uncommon when working groups have similar, they're addressing similar issues, and it's up to the commission in the fall to, find the right blend, if you will, of recommendations from working groups.
Yeah, and Garrett, we in the steering committee, we already encouraged that. The difficulty is that the ECO is really focused differently. Ours proposed on getting much more EV adoption. Theirs proposed were alternative to cars option, alternative to fossil fuel cars. So one of the things you have to talk about is how much of the amount, and they did not have 2 million. We had 2 million in ours. They didn't have a number in theirs. Are they going to take some of the money that we suggested for EVs and instead use it for light rail. It's just a little more complicated than I think you can do by a vote. May it happen at the commission level? Very much so, but we've already tried having that discussion, and at least it's not as easy as it sounds, for what it's worth. But those in favor of number 1, raise your hand. And you can record Bob Wright's proxy for this one.
Okay, so I think that was.
And I am voting for Kim as her proxy in addition to myself.
Thank you. I think that brings it to 17-4.
Okay. Hands down. All opposed? All those.
Can you just clarify? So is the desire that we vote either for or against each one of these, or do you just want us to vote for the ones we do like?
You're going to vote for only 4, up to 4 of them. You could vote for less than 4. For up to 4 that you want to be a priority. Your vote does not mean you like it or dislike it. It means whether you think it should be one of the 4 priorities.
Right. I'm just asking, like, if I like one of these, but not enough to be one of my 4, can I just not vote?
No. You would vote no if you don't want it to be top of your 4. I mean, you could abstain. It probably has the same effect.
Same effect, right? Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. All those abstaining? Okay. I think that one pretty clearly will be one of the recommendations. Next one. All those in favor, raise your hand. And you can record a vote for Bob Wright on this one.
Okay, I think that brings it to 8-4.
Okay. All those opposed?
The 1 opposed.
Okay, all those abstaining.
Let's see, 8 abstaining.
Okay, you want to go down to number 8. Okay, all those supporting the, and you take my amendment out, obviously, because it was not adopted. Okay, all those in support of this language?
I'm also voting for Kim as her proxy in favor of this as well.
Thank you, Jamie. I think that brings it to 11-4.
All those opposed?
I saw 7 opposed.
All those abstaining? Well,
See 2 abstaining.
okay, let's go to number 9. All those in favor?
I am once again voting for Kim in addition to myself.
All right, thank you. I think that's 13-4.
And I believe, yeah, this is one that Bob Wright voted favor for too.
you. 14.
All those opposed? One opposed. All those abstaining?
Six.
Okay, go down to number 13. I think you need to scroll up just a little bit. Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter. We've all read it. All those in favor?
And one last time, I am voting for Kim in addition to myself in favor of this proposal.
All right, 17-4.
And all those opposed?
Sorry, I had my hand up longer than it should have been.
So it's one opposed. All those abstaining? Okay, Mark, I've lost track. What was the top four and support?
So starting in reverse order, recommendation 13 had 17-4. I think that makes it one of the top. Recommendation 9 had 14-4. Recommendation 8 has 11-4. Recommendation 2 has 8-4, and recommendation 1 has 17-4, which makes recommendation 2 on the EV education campaign the one that does not make the cut as the top 4.
Okay, we will be presenting not only the recommendations but the vote counts to the commission. And as I said, the commission's already aware of the steering committee, at least of the commission's already aware of the conversation with ECO. But we'll present these as the 3 recommendations with the vote counts to the commission. Anybody have any other questions, comments, additions to want to add? Okay, then I'd like, in Kim's absence, I'd like to thank you on behalf of both of the co-chairs for all of the time and effort that you've put into this project this year. We'll be presenting these to the commission, and then we will get back to you and begin planning for next year. Mark, any final comments?
None from me. Thank you all very much. And yeah, as Mike said, you can look forward to the Climate Commission having discussion on these items this fall.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Bye.